Good morning.
Sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate. I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object.
I appeal the ruling.
Objection is heard.
And when they pulled the plug on it, to use my aunt, Coretta Scott King, and we had different viewpoints during her lifetime, but I was once her press secretary, correspondence secretary. And so to use her, a very gracious woman of integrity, to play the race card and put my aunt in the middle of it, it was just too much.
Because during the testimony and the arguments over whether or not Jeff Sessions would be the new Attorney General.
And he's now the Attorney General.
He is. Everybody knew he would be the Attorney General. Elizabeth Warren read a letter that she had written years earlier. What's interesting, though, is that after that letter was written, a couple of years later, she actually came out, I read, and said some positive things about Jeff Sessions.
She greeted him at an event for Rosa Parks, and A.G. Sessions was one of those who sponsored the Rosa Parks Museum and that kind of thing.
So it's all political.
But why didn't she read the letter when Aunt Coretta said that immigration will be bad for the Negro job market? Why didn't she read that?
Yeah, why didn't she? What do you think?
I don't know. And even President Obama, when he was senator, he said the same thing. So now, for political reasons, playing the race card, attacking African Americans who are conservative.
Yeah.
You know.
My name is America Ferrera.
Hello. Are you still awake out there? Are you sure about that?
Present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I am happy to join with you today in what will go.
In this video, I'd like to discuss part 3 of today's protest versus the original protest in the 60s.
When I was in high school, there was no such thing as African American. You know, there was no such thing as Latino, like they say now, or whatever. You know, so everybody, you know, my friends, they say, hey, I'm black. You know, I'm not from Africa. So then this whole thing, and if you would say, yeah, you're African, they would get pissed off. You know, it's funny. you know. So I don't have an issue being listening or watching protests as long as it doesn't disrupt other people's daily life, which a lot of these protests do, and they're damaging property of people who possibly could be on their side or don't have nothing to do with anything, you know. So the other part of this problem is that they're protesting and they don't know why they're protesting. They're just out there just trying to be part of something, even though it's destructive. So they're just out there doing what they, you know, just because somebody else is doing it.
So it's just, you're saying it's more of a trendy thing?
More of a trendy thing, yeah. It's like a fashion statement nowadays.
Yeah.
No true emotions about it, except that they want to be part of the group. But they don't really. Some people don't even know why they're doing it, and they're adding other agendas to it that have nothing to do with that protest.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
The problem we're having in the United States now is that we're bending over backwards for the minority, and when I mean minority, I don't mean place. I mean, by you know, something. For example, some guy drives past a house, a public place that has a cross, and since he doesn't like it, well then guess what? We're going to take it down. But nobody bothers to ask the majority if they like that cross up there. You know?
Yeah.
And that's how this country has become through everything. So they don't want to offend the minority, but yet don't care about what the majority cares about. You know? So
We are America. And we are here to stay. We march today for our families and our neighbors, for our future, for the causes we claim and for the causes that claim us. We march today for the moral core of this nation, against which our new president is waging a war.
But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds.
Fuck you.
We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic height of meeting physical force with soul force.
Fuck you. It is the beginning of much needed change. Change that will require sacrifice, people. Change that
Well, in our nation's capital and across the country, massive crowds taking the streets with an anti-Trump message.
But our next guest is calling the Women's March a missed opportunity. Dr. Alveda King is the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the director of African American Outreach for Priests for Life. And we should also mention she's one of the speakers at the National Prayer Service yesterday. And today also we should mention it's your birthday.
I believe that all of those messages, let's blow up the White House, we hate Donald Trump, we don't want to talk to him. I believe the missed opportunity, it's a little bit sad because some of the messages of the women, equity and pay, you know, because sometimes even today men get more money than the women who are doing the jobs. If you saw that movie Hidden Figures, and those ladies were black women, so they were really disenfranchised. So that's still going on. There's a lot of violence against girls and women and human trafficking, domestic violence. All of that is so very important. So we do want equity, job equity, pay equity. We want to be safe. And those messages were missed because of the emotional whatever upheaval, and we don't like him. We just don't like him. You know, Mr. Trump has beautiful women in his family. They're brilliant and beautiful. That's a double bonus. And so he loves women, he works with women, and I think that the ladies are missing an opportunity to get the important messages out.
Dr. King, you laid out some very important issues, but oftentimes women issues, I was at that rally, some women's issues can be reduced down to just pro-life or pro-choice, and there were some pro-life groups that wanted to take part in the rally and were not allowed. Why does it get reduced down to that?
Some of my sisters were there and they were pushed back pro-life. You know, I'm fact-filled message. And so the little baby girls in the womb, what about them? If you push out the pro-life message, who's going to represent those little girls who are being aborted?
Last time we talked about the fact that the police and National Guard were called in to protect the protesters from the public. Now it's the other way around. They're called in to protect the public from the protesters. We also talked about the fact that the original protesters were encouraged, schooled to be non-violent. And today's protests, they are violent and they're vulgar. They're not. It's not the kind of thing that you would take your kids to. Right. We also talked about the fact that in the first protest, you know, maybe we were smarter back then. Maybe it was the food. And along with that, the last thing, and I will carry this into this discussion, which is the first protest was a heartfelt human rights issue. And that's why the protesters could articulate their argument. And that's why it was so rational, it was hard to get around.
To say integrate the counters, or to tell Nashville to do what Nashville knows it should have done a long time ago, like about 95 years ago after the Civil War. So I asked the mayor, first of all, Mayor West, do you feel that it's wrong to discriminate against a person solely on the basis of his race or color?
And there was no one paying us
against a currency or make a statement, and the whole country falls apart.
Well, it's a tremendous sense of responsibility, actually. And it's also a humbling experience because I am actually trying to do the right thing, and sometimes what I do has an unintended negative consequence, as it did in Russia.
Protesters are paid. Professional protesters, they're paid well to march and actually tear up. And in fact, we mentioned how fighting skills were a plus. Political knowledge and fight skills a plus. And there's nothing illegal about it because it's advertised as actors in the play, or political actors, right? But the sucker punch, people walking and you sucker punch them from behind, that takes a lot of courage and balls to do that, obviously. But that's what it is, because that's what we've degenerated to. And unlike the first protest, the way you protested was as important, if not more important, than what you were protesting. Meaning, it was about what's right for all mankind, not just black folk, but for everybody. And that's why the tone sounded the way it did. It wasn't one group trying to usurp itself over another, black folk trying to, usurp white folk. It wasn't black folk saying, the white man has got a Cadillac, so I deserve one. No. It was that you want me to sit at the back of the bus when there are all these seats around because of the color of my skin. Well, you know what? Fine. I won't take the bus at all. And it was that position, it was that protest which started it all, because, black folk weren't just left alone. Okay, because they almost brought down the bus industry.
A national boycott was organized. Those chain stores which discriminated in the South were also picketed in the North.
Do you think that the boycott has had any great impact on these national chains in a city like New York up to this time?
Well, I've already seen statements from some of the executive officers of both Crescent and Woolworth indicating that they are concerned that a decline has already been noted and is just beginning.
I take it then that you are advocating Negroes in New York to stay out of these national chain stores?
Oh, no, that's not true. I'm advocating that American citizens interested in democracy should stay out of chain stores.
The word got around pretty quick, you don't go downtown anymore.
Within a month, the boycott by black customers was almost completely effective.
When it starts to hit your pocketbook, then you realize, hey, this is serious. The merchants are getting it from both sides. Then there was some violence. Blacks and some sympathetic whites were hit over the head by these blonde-headed hoods that seem to come out of the sewer for such occasions. And those who were standing in line in a movie or trying to get into a restaurant or cafeteria They were very hurt, and this created a fear, so that then white people started to be afraid to come to shop too. And that was the main feeling I remember about those times, fear.
It was not just student protesters who were attacked. Blacks who worked downtown also became targets of random violence.
Just like the migration of 1910, where blacks said, you know what, you don't want us in the South, you know, we're these low people, we'll just leave. You know that the Klan sent thugs at bus terminals and train terminals to beat black folks up so they wouldn't leave. You see, that's what brings us to the place where, you know what, it's do or die, because you won't leave us alone. You know, it wasn't, we want what you have. You have a nice house and a nice car and a certain life. We want it. It wasn't that. It was, you don't want us on the bus. You want us to sit at the back. We won't do the bus at all. And as a result of that, the bus industry almost collapsed. You see, because they needed us. They needed it. They needed. Remember, I talked about racism. It's not like it's not like a stereotype. Racism is something you need to be true. In closing, I'd like to point out that the original 60s civil rights movement has been used as a platform and a prototype over and over and over again. To quote from Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, simply because you feel as though we should have a world without borders or immigration laws. You feel confused about how to go to the bathroom, and that the biology of male and female is what you say it is. You feel that even if a foot is sticking out of the womb, it's not murder so long as you get to the child before it's born. And to act like, in the case of Mike Brown and someone like Emmett Till, is pretty much the same thing. Well, it's kind of a mockery of the original civil rights movement now, isn't it?
We must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.